Education was the theme for the 37th Ordinary Session of the Assembly of the African Union. But at the opening ceremony, other pressing issues also took center stage. With his tenure as African Union Commission Chair drawing to a close, Moussa Faki, while acknowledging the milestones achieved in the past 7 years, was blunt in his assessment of the continental body.
The frantic tendency to make decisions without the real political will to implement them has grown to such an extent that it has become devastating to our individual and collective credibility. As an illustration, over the last 3 years, 93% of the decisions have not been implemented.
Faki painted a bleak picture of the continent's state of peace and security, referring to conflicts in the Sahel region, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Sudan, and the coups witnessed in recent months.
Never since the establishment of the African Union has such a number of transitions following unconstitutional change of government has been seen in Africa. Our failure to counter such a phenomenon is obvious.
Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, meanwhile, called for the continent to be self-sufficient as it pursues sustainable development.
We are blessed with favorable weather, arable land, water, forests, natural resources, and a large youth population who embody the great potential of our continent. We should not be seeking for aid.
Outgoing African Union Chairman Azali Assoumani, who is the President of Comoros, has been succeeded by President Mohamed Ghazouani of Mauritania, who will serve as AU Chairperson for a period of 1 year. Ghazouani has pledged to focus on the continent's security.
Terrorism and civil wars in our continent generate a loss of life and a destruction of infrastructure and economic systems. All of this means that the fight for peace and security should be our first priority.
Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva and the Prime Minister of Palestine Mohamed Shtayyeh also addressed the gathering. This opening ceremony followed a different script from previous events. A call to action by the Commission's chairperson has given the leaders much to think about before the summit comes to an end on Sunday. Bobat Nagila, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Well, our reporter Wilkista Nyabo is joining us live now from the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa. Wilkista, so what's on the cards for the last day of the Heads of State Summit?
Thank you, Beatrice. Well, these are the last few hours of the 37th Ordinary Session of the African Union Summit here in Addis Ababa, and we are seeing that really this place is abuzz with activity. We are seeing the heads of state, the leaders who are still here, just going around, going into meeting rooms, trying to conclude their discussions because they only have a few hours to do that, and in order to come up with resolutions to chart the way forward for the next year. And we do know that this year leaders were discussing a number of issues that the continent continues to deal with. They discussed education, which was the main issue, the main theme for this year, but there were other issues such as food security, climate change. We did also see issues such as trade and economy and even health on the sidelines, but the issue that really took center stage was the issue of peace and security on the continent. We do know that parts of the continent have experienced turmoil. In the Sahel region, there are countries that have experienced coups. There is the situation that is unfolding in the DRC as well as in Sudan. And these are some of the issues that leaders are still talking about, are still trying to come to some sort of conclusion, some sort of resolution, or finding proposals, recommendations, suggestions to chart the way forward on how to tackle this. So we are seeing that a number of them are still in meeting rooms up until this moment, and we do know that later in the day, once they have finished those meetings, that the chairperson of the African Union Commission will hold a press briefing where he will basically detail and outline what they have discussed as pertaining to different issues and the different measures that they have decided that they will be taking. So we will be getting a clearer picture a little later in the day, Beatrice.
Well, Krista, you've talked about issues of peace and security, and one of the most urgent issues that was expected to be discussed at length on peace and security is the insecurity in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So what's coming out on this?
Well, this is definitely a conversation and a discussion that is still ongoing. But earlier, CGTN was able to have a conversation to speak with the communications minister from the DRC, and he did confirm to us that there had been a meeting at the AU that had been chaired by the president of Angola, and that this meeting had brought together, among others, the presidents of Rwanda and DRC, and that during that meeting, DRC had said that it wanted Rwanda to stop interfering in its internal affairs, and that what they wanted to see from the African Union was for the African Union to really take a strong stand on this matter, to be very decisive about the way it dealt with that matter. However, we will not know really the outcome until a bit later in the day. We do expect that press briefing, where all the issues and the resolutions of the African Union going forward will shed light on what exactly was resolved and what the outcome of that particular meeting was. Beatrice.
Well, Krista, you know, the African Leaders Summit has also come at a time when several countries like Senegal, Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso are either experiencing political challenges or are falling out with their regional blocs. What's the summit saying about this?
Well, we did hear the summit speak about this quite openly during the opening ceremony yesterday. And one of the things that we did hear, especially the African Union Commission chairperson, Moussa Faki Mahamat, speaking about the commission and also speaking about it just really needing to do more, to be a bit more decisive, talking about maybe its failings in the last 3 years or so, saying in the last 3 years about 93% of the decisions that had been made had not been implemented, and perhaps that trying to give a little push in that way so that this year perhaps the talks that are held here can lead to different outcomes, and that there can be a little more push for implementation, especially pertaining to regions that are still in turmoil. 6 countries were not able to attend the summit. You will remember that 6 of them, because of the situations in their country, were suspended from the AU and therefore were barred from attending the summit. And therefore just we are seeing a little more push for more implementation of decisions that are made here, and we will be hoping to see a little bit more of that, and perhaps a little more forceful speaking during that presser, where the resolutions and basically the way forward will be made clear. Beatrice.
All right, Krista Nabwa joining us there from the African Union Summit in Addis Ababa. Well, CGTN's Robert Nagila, who's also in Addis Ababa, sat down with the president of Comoros, who is now the immediate former chairperson of the African Union after that election yesterday. President Azali Assoumani spoke about his experience as AU chair and the pending issues that the African Union has to face head-on, among other things.
The conflict between Russia and Ukraine and the conflict in Gaza between Palestinians, Hamas and Israel, have raised a lot of tensions between some countries in the West and some countries in Africa. What is your opinion of this?
I think that the world, including us in Africa, indeed, we should not close our eyes, because whether we watch it or not, we are concerned. Even if it is the war between Ukraine and Russia, we must also invest to find a solution, because it impacts the economy, but it is also a war. But in this Palestine-Israel war, it is as if the world is realizing that in fact it will be necessary that the Israeli forces accept that there must be a Palestinian state in which they live together. As I said, if it is a state, it has duties and rights. Today, if it is a state, it makes acts. It is a little more incriminating because it is a state. But it's not a state that we can incriminate. It is not easy. So if we have a Palestinian state, there is peace in the Gulf. The Israelis must understand that, and there will be no peace if there is not a Palestinian state. They have no choice, because they are neighbors. They must live together, and there must be one state, and that's how they can live in peace and security.
Mr. President, do you have any words of advice for your successor?
Comme je vous ai dit, donc la règle veut que je sois le porte-parfait.
I will make my experience during this year benefit my successor in all fields, whether it is in the security field, whether it is in the field of the African continental free trade area, or in the field that we have always forgotten about the climate, because we have forgotten. But with this climate problem, it creates other problems that are the consequences of the climate because we are negligent. So indeed, I will be his advisor. As soon as I contribute, we know each other, we are really friends. I will be his advisor to try to see how we accompany him so that we can really have results, especially on these conflicts of Gaza and the Russian-Ukraine conflict. It must stop.
Le problème du climat,